Hello, dear friends. Our today's lecture is all about styles of pronunciation. Well, it's a common knowledge that the language we are using changes with the situation in which communication is carried on. A particular social situation makes us respond with an appropriate variety of language. We use one variety of language at home, another with our friends, a third at work, and so on. In other words, there are appropriate linguistic manners for the different types of situations in which language is used, and we are expected to know these manners in our native language. Varieties of language correlating with social situations are generally termed styles. The distinctive feature of styles include language features of various kinds, among which phonetic modifications play the leading role in oral speech. The main circumstances of reality that cause phonetic modification in speech are as follows. The aim of spontaneity of speech, which may be to instruct, to inform, to narrate, or to chat. The extent of spontaneity of speech, unprepared speech or prepared speech. The nature of interchange, that is, the use of a form of speech which may either suggest only listening or both listening and exchange of remarks, a lecture, a discussion, or a conversation. Social and psychological factors which determine the extent of formality of speech and the attitude expressed. A friendly conversation with close friends, a quarrel, an official conversation. These circumstances or factors are termed extralinguistic factors. Thus, different ways of pronunciation caused by extralinguistic factors and characterized by definite phonetic features are called phonetic styles or styles of pronunciation. Correlation between extralinguistic and intralinguistic variations doesn't necessarily imply that there are as many varieties of language or styles as there are extralinguistic situations. First of all, the factors or dimensions constituting an extralinguistic situation are not equally important as far as modification of language means is concerned. The greatest influence is the respect and exercised by such factors as the social status of the speakers and their relations to each other, the place of communication, and the subject matter or the topic. Significant variations within each of the given factors or dimensions are mostly conveniently described in terms of an opposition formal and informal, and there is a strong tendency for identical features, formal or informal, from different dimensions to co-occur. An informal subject matter tends to be combined with an informal sphere of communication and informal relations between the speakers and the vice versa. Accordingly, the broadest and most widely recognized division of English speech is into formal and informal styles. The formal style covers those varieties of English that we hear from a lecturer, a public speaker, a radio announcer, and so on. These types of conversation are frequently reduced to monologues addressed by one person to many and are often used prepared in advance. They also include official and business talks. The informal style is used in person everyday communication. This category embraces the most frequent and the most widespread occurrence of spoken English. Most typically, informal speech takes the form of a conversation, although monologue is not infrequent either. According to the degree of formality in one case and familiarity in the other, the two styles can be subdivided as follows. Formal is divided into formal official, public speeches or official talks, and formal neutral. A lecture, a teacher's explanation, a business talk, or an exchange of information between colleagues with variations depending on the status of the partners, or a report at work or research before a small group of people. The second is informal. Informal, ordinary, a conversation on train, bus, an exchange of remarks in a shop or cafe, post office or railway station, an everyday talk between friends, neighbors, or schoolmates, and informal, familiar, everyday conversation between intimate friends and relatives. Oral speech is a very complicated phenomenon where too many factors are involved. Phonetic styles are related to social setting or circumstances in which language is used. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a person speaks differently on different occasions, when chatting with intimate friends or talking to official persons, when delivering a lecture or speaking over the radio, giving a dictation exercise. In other words, the choice of the speech style is determined by the situation. Moreover, the problem of speech typology and phonetic differences conditioned by such extralinguistic factors as age, sex, personality traits, status, occupation, purposes, social identity or class dialect, and the emotional state of the speaker also bear on the issue. Intonation plays a central role in stylistic differentiation of oral texts. Stylistically explicable deviations from intonational norms reveal conventional patterns differing from language to language. Adult speakers are both transmitters and receivers of the same range of phonostylistic effects carried by intonation. The intonation system of a language provides a recognizable invariant basis of these effects from person to person. The uses of intonation in this function show that the intonation so conveyed in many cases is impossible and is separable from lexical and grammatical meaning expressed by words and constructions in a language, and from co-occurring situations. Information, nonverbal context, and the meaning of the intonation cannot be judged in isolation. The problem of intonational styles classification can hardly be regarded as settled as yet. Several different styles of pronunciation may be distinguished, although no generally accepted classification of styles has been worked out, and the peculiarities of different styles have not yet been sufficiently investigated. Most scholars do not argue about the number of styles being 5, but disagree about their terminology. Besides, it should be noted that the phonetic style forming means are the degree of assimilation, reduction, and elision, all of which depend on the degree of carefulness of pronunciation. Each phonetic style is characterized by a specific combination of certain segmental and prosodic features. The British phonetician Daniel Jones distinguishes such styles of pronunciation as the rapid familiar style, the slower colloquial style, the natural style used in addressing a fair-sized audience, the acquired style of the stage, and the acquired style used in singing. Kenyon described 4 principal styles of good spoken English: familiar colloquial, formal colloquial, public speaking style, and public reading styles. Liebscherber wrote on the need to distinguish a great variety of styles of speech in accordance with the great variety of different social occasions and situations. But for the sake of simplicity, he suggested that only 2 styles of pronunciation should be distinguished, that is, colloquial style, characterized of people's quiet talk, and full style, which we use when we want to make our speech especially distinct, and for this purpose clearly articulate all the syllables of each word. The other way of classifying phonetic styles is suggested by Dubovsky. He discriminates the following styles: informal ordinary, formal neutral, formal official, informal familiar, declamatory. The division is based on different degrees of formality or rather familiarity between the speaker and the listener. Sokolova and others' approach is slightly different, and it is the very classification of phonostyles that is considered useful for teaching and learning purposes. According to Sokolova, there are 5 intonational styles singled out mainly according to the purpose of communication. They are as follows: informal, informational or formal style, academic or scientific style, publicistic style, declamatory or artistic style, conversational or familiar style. These styles are the products of the development of the written variety of language. In the case of oral representation of written texts, each verbal style is given a phonetic identity. Thus, the situational context and the speaker's purpose determine the choice of an intonational style. The primary situational determinant is the kind of relationship existing between the participants in a communicative transaction. Informational or formal style is characterized by predominant use of intellectual intonation patterns. It occurs in formal discourse where the task set by the sender of the message is to communicate an information without giving it any emotional or volitional evaluation. The intonation style is used, for instance, by radio television announcers when reading weather forecasts, news, in various official situations. It is considered to be stylistically neutral.
Over the Midlands, spreading into parts of Wales and drifting into northern England. Some showers across the southwest as well. Most of Scotland and Northern Ireland actually dry, a little brighter than yesterday.
Scientific or academic style is both intellectual and volitional and uses the same intonation patterns. The speaker's purpose here is not only to prove a hypothesis or to create new concepts, to disclose relations between different phenomena, but also to direct the listener's attention to the message carried in the semantic component. Although the style tends to be objective and precise, it's not entirely unemotional and devoid of any individuality. Scientific style is frequently used, for example, by university lecturers, school teachers, or by scientists in formal and informal discussions.
Problems, many mysteries, but his paper is an effort to try to reduce the mysteries by reducing both constraints to the same constraint, using the device of Neo-Davidsonian event semantics, which interprets a junction as a kind of coordination. So you can reduce both of the problems to the same problem, coordination.
Declamatory style is the style with emotional role of intonation, thereby intonation patterns used for intellectual, volitional, and emotional purposes have an equal share. This style comprises 2 varieties of oral representation of written literary texts, namely reading aloud a piece of descriptive prose, that is the author's speech, and the author's reproduction of actual conversation, that is the speech of characters. The speaker's aim is to appeal simultaneously to the mind, the will, and the feelings of the listener by image-bearing devices.
Stop thinking, worrying, looking over your shoulder, wondering, doubting, fearing, hurting, hoping for some easy way out, struggling, grasping, confusing, itching, scratching, mumbling, bumbling, grumbling, humbling, stumbling, numbling, rambling, gambling, tumbling, scumbling, scrambling, hitching, hatching, bitching, moaning, groaning, honing, boning, horse shitting, hair splitting, nitpicking, piss trickling, nose sticking, ass gouging, eyeball poking, finger pointing, alleyway sneaking, long waiting, small stepping, evil eyeing, back scratching, searching, perching, besmirching, grinding away at yourself. Stop it and just do.
Publicistic style is a very broad label which covers a variety of types distinguishable on the basis of the speaker's occupation, situation, and purpose. Publicistic style is characterized by predominance of volitional intonation patterns against the background of intellectual and emotional ones. The general aim of the intonational style is to exert influence on the listener to convince him that the speaker's interpretation is the only correct one and to cause him to accept the point of view expressed by the speaker. The task is accomplished not merely through logical argumentation, but through persuasion and emotional appeal. For this reason, publicistic style has features in common with scientific style on the one hand and the declamatory style on the other. As distinct from the latter, its persuasive and emotional appeal is achieved not only by the use of imaginary but also by a more direct manner.
For the skill, command and courtesy with which she has dealt with questions over the last 11 years from that dispatch box. Mr. Speaker, can I ask my honourable friend if she is aware that Stansted Airport's new terminal is to open in March of next year, and the main road serving it will not be available until 1995, and the rail link serving it will not be of adequate capacity until that same year? Would she agree that if we are to get more public acceptance amongst communities which have major developments thrust upon them, it would be better for essential infrastructure to come sooner rather than later?
Conversational style is the mostly commonly used style which occurs in natural, spontaneous, everyday speech. This variety is more familiar for the vast majority of people than any other. That's why it's called familiar. This kind of English is heard in natural conversational interaction between speakers. Conversations are one of the most complex forms of human behavior. They consist of more than verbal language. Communication, to be effective, relies on other features than language and a great deal on what is not said. It's possible to single out some common linguistic features. For example, talks of this kind are characterized by the explicitness of the language, as the speaker relies on the extralinguistic factors such as context and kinetics. This manifests in incompleteness of utterances, as the context makes it clear what was meant by the speaker, thus making redundant the vocal expression. The lack of planning and the randomness of subject matter, as well as non-fluency, high proportion of errors involving hesitation, phenomena slips of the tongue, and all sorts of overlapping and simultaneous speech are also characteristic of a conversational style.
On stage, I'm just going to lock into you to feel less.
I don't think you're so dreamy.
No cast director like, this kid plays chess, let's put him in a movie. So
Can't you fake
but it was
chess?
a lot. It was like chess, bike riding, swimming, like normal things. Sorry.
Can't say that word.
Sorry.